Look, in my view, land size isn't king anymore, and I think in the 20th century it was, and largely driven by baby boomers who had the Great Australian Dream as an aspiration, and their idea of the Great Australian Dream was a detached house on a quarter-acre block surrounded by a garden with a barbecue and a hills hoist. And that was, represented by TV shows that you'd watch at the time. If you watch Neighbours, that was, in housing, Country Practice, Coronation Street, it was all regarding detached houses. But if you think about the shows that Generation Y are watching, the norm for them is apartment living, generally New York apartment living. If you think Seinfeld, you think Friends, you think How I Met Your Mother, those types of programs are all high density apartment living that Generation Y has grown up seeing as the norm. So I think that it's important to understand that the shift is happening. Baby boomers will soon not be the dominant force in the workplace because they're starting to retire, and Generation X and Generation Y will soon be the dominant players in the workforce. So it's important to understand what Generation Y want, and if they've grown up seeing apartment living, their budget will only allow them to buy apartments. They're not prepared generally to move further out from the city to get more land. They'd rather live in a townhouse than a house just so they can still stay closer. I think it's important to understand that in the 20th century, land content or land size was king, but in the 21st century, I think land value is king. So if you're faced with the decision as an investor of whether, if I've got $500,000 to spend and I can buy a property that's further out that has more land content, or I can buy maybe and that's a house, or I can buy a 2-bedroom apartment that has, maybe one of 20 and it's on a smaller parcel of land that you can actually say that's mine, but it's got a really high land value because it's surrounded by maybe a beautiful Victorian or a beautiful Edwardian. I can walk down the road and get a cup of coffee. I can get around 2 blocks away and jump on a train and get to work. If that land value is so in demand, in my view, and it's a little bit simplistic, but in my view, comparing the two, I'd actually prefer the higher land value than the higher land content, simply because I think that that is going to be more in demand. So I think in the past it's been really relevant that land content and land size is really crucial, largely driven by what's in demand by baby boomers, but it's important to make the shift and have an understanding about what Generation X want to live in and what Generation Y are prepared to live in, because at the end of the day, property investment is all about supply and demand. And if the demand exists for that lower, or that sort of land value versus the land content, chances are that's what's going to go up in value.